This podcast of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, is sponsored by AAA Heating and Air.
The premier HVAC company in the Midlands is growing. Are you a top HVAC technician?
AAA Heating and Air is looking for dedicated applicants to fill their fast-growing service department with top-notch HVAC technicians.
If you're the best, then they want you. If you're ready to stop working and start a career, you can earn up to $100,000 plus a year at AAA Heating and Air.
Quality candidates will have at least 2 years experience and a good driving record. Benefits include top industry salaries, commission on service and unit sales, set call limits, company-provided take-home vehicle and gas card, company-provided cell phone and tablet, health, dental, and vision benefits, 401k retirement plan with company match, and scaled PTO based on length of service.
Contact Roy and Dana Finley at 803-677-1500 or check out their job postings on Facebook or ZipRecruiter.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
$11 Friday morning, Football Friday. It's always sponsored by Carolina Honda Powerhouse here on the game. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you in the Herndon Chevrolet Studios, and we're going to jump right in to talking about this matchup tomorrow between the Gamecocks and the Wildcats. Joining us now on the Love Chevrolet phone lines from Kentucky Sports Radio, Adam Luckett. Adam, first of all, thanks so much for taking a few minutes of your time this morning to give us some insight into this Kentucky program. They come in off of a tough loss at home to Alabama last weekend, 41-29. And while maybe the expectation was not for Kentucky to pull the upset, when you play a team like that, you can often learn a lot about where your team and your program stand against a program like Alabama. What, if anything, did you learn coming away from last weekend's game about the Wildcats?
Yeah, I think you kind of look back and you combine it with the Georgia game when Kentucky played them back in October. I think they entered a game against what might be the two best teams in college football, who were both ready to go from the jump, and Kentucky just wasn't ready for that kind of prize heavyweight fight. And so they really got hit with a big jab early and never really responded after that, and it just showed where Kentucky is and where they are on the food chain, I would say. And really in big moments this year, they've fallen short against ranked teams specifically. And that's kind of been the story of the season. Kentucky's handled everyone else, but when they've gotten in big moments against some of these higher-ranked teams, they've fallen short.
Hey, Adam, it's Wes. Appreciate you doing this, man. I think you're probably on the way to Columbia right now. How far along are we on the trip?
Yeah, we just topped on 64 about 30-ish minutes ago, so we still got at least a good 6 or 7 hours left. But looking forward to getting down there.
Yeah, man, looking forward to having y'all here. So, from the outside looking in, man, I'm used to seeing a Kentucky defense that, is really good up front and then just has really tight windows to throw into on the back end. It doesn't necessarily seem like this Kentucky team, especially when they've faced good offenses, has kind of been up to that standard this year. Watching them every single week like you do, what have been the issues with Kentucky's defense, especially when they play really good offenses?
Yeah, I think you mentioned up front. I still think they're good up front. They're stopping the run at a pretty good clip. Only really Tennessee has been able to get it going, but I think that for Kentucky, that was more of kind of a matchup scheme issue. They've had a hard time matching up with Heupel ever since he's been there. For everyone else, they're stopping the run, but their big weakness is just kind of the pass rush coverage combo, and more so on the coverage end of things. They're really struggling in the secondary. They dealt with some injuries this year. And that's been the point of the team where they've really had their biggest problems on defense, and that's the thing they're trying to figure out. It sounds like they're going to get some guys back this week, which will help. But that's the place you can get Kentucky is spread them out and throw it on them. And if you can protect the quarterback, they've been known. They've shown this year that they'll give up some yards. So that when you're looking at biggest weaknesses on the Kentucky team, definitely say the secondary and pass coverage. It's not just been the coverage aspect. Tackling has been poor too. So it's been all of kind of around the board of disappointing play there in the back end, and that's definitely the biggest weakness on the team as we stand at this point in the season.
Adam, Chris Clark here. Thanks again for joining us. So given that you mentioned that, it kind of put this question in my mind. Mark Stoops talked on Monday about how explosive South Carolina's offense has been, and if you look at some of South Carolina's metrics, they have indeed been very explosive, whether it's scoring plays or getting themselves in position to possibly score. via chunk plays, and we know that Stoops' defensive philosophy is to prevent those big explosive plays. Has Kentucky been not as adept this year because they've had tackling issues, because they've had pass rush and secondary issues? How do you feel that matchup could possibly go with South Carolina being really good at creating explosive plays and Kentucky, not wanting to give them up?
Yeah, I think with Kentucky, it's a zone-heavy defense, and so you're not going to get a lot of one-on-ones. They're going to make you make, like Wes mentioned, some tight window throws, but they just have bust and coverage. So there's been moments where guys are just running wide open. That's more shown up against Alabama and Georgia. I think the Missouri game was a little bit weird in that field position was just a huge part of that game. Brady Cook, I think he kept them ahead of the chains, but they weren't really hitting a bunch of explosives in the air. They kept Florida in check in the air, but I think Georgia and Alabama, they just got overwhelmed, I think, by kind of the talent in the moment of those games. And then Tennessee was more so a scheme thing. So I think Kentucky, there's definitely some aspect, especially if you go tempo, maybe what Tennessee can do, you can maybe catch them with communication issues and bust. But they hang their hat on big play prevention, and they've always done that, and that has let them down this year on defense. And that's probably the biggest root of their problems is that they've been a little bit more leaky in the big play department, and that's not what this defense is built to be. It's built to take those away and make you go on 10, 12, 13, 14 play drives to score touchdowns. And we've seen way too many, I think, of those 5, 6 play drives where teams are hitting bombs over their head and creating easy scores.
Again, talking to Adam Luckett from Kentucky Sports Radio. You mentioned tempo there a moment ago, and this Kentucky offense runs fewer plays per game than anybody in the country. But, going back a couple weeks ago, they did start to mix some tempo in against a team like Tennessee, and that actually ended up being perhaps Devin Leary's best performance of the entire season. Did only end up losing that game by 6 points. What is kind of the philosophy behind mixing in the tempo, and why does that maybe benefit Devin Leary compared to the other ways they've run things on offense this year?
Yeah, I think part of it is he comes from more of a spread-ish background at NC State, where Kentucky's very much pro-style. They're as pro-style, I would say, as any offense in college football, just from a huddle aspect and tight formations and under center and everything that comes with that. So I think there was some comfortability with that. I also think a lot of that was just they were staying ahead of the chains. A big thing with this Kentucky offense is they've just fallen behind the chains, and that's been a bad news for them because they haven't been able to recover from that. And I think for Leary, you just look at his completion percentage. That's been a big thing. Just completing passes has been a problem for them this year. I think a lot of people get hung up on the pace, and that has been a big discussion point around here. But more so, it's just the overall efficiency of the offense. It's not getting behind in the run game. It's completing passes, not creating second and tens. And when they have struggled, that's when they struggle. When they're not completing passes, Leary's hovering around 50% completion rate. And the run game's been a little bit boom or bust with Ray Davis. It's not the efficiency that you're used to seeing from a Benny Snell or Chris Rodriguez where they're just churning and getting 4, 5, 6 yards. There's been more kind of like, there's a 30-yard gain, but, there's 2 yards, there's 3 yards, there's 1 yard, there's a loss of 3. It's been a lot of kind of boom or bust factor with this offense, and that's, I think, when you look at the low play count, that has a lot to do with that.
Adam, there's been a lot of talk around here in Columbia about South Carolina. They've run a lot more 3-3-5 the last couple of weeks after, they base out of a 4-2-5. But, Kentucky is one of the maybe few opponents South Carolina plays where, like you said, it is a little bit more pro style. But just from a personnel standpoint on offense, is this a Kentucky offense that's going to put 2 tight ends on the field and maybe force South Carolina into like some 4-3 looks, which we really don't see them do much of at all? Or are they still a team, even when they want to run the football, are they still putting those 3 receivers on the field?
They will run a good blend of 12 personnel. Mm-hmm. You will see that a good amount. They have 3 tight ends that they want to play. Jordan Dingle, number 85, Brendan Bates, number 80, and Josh Caddis, number 84. So they are going to use them. Now, it's not a full-on 12 personnel offense. They still want to get their 3 top receivers on the field as much as possible, but they are going to mix that up. And with Liam Cohen, that's a big thing with this offense. It's mixing up personnel, giving different looks. And so, I would fully expect if Kentucky's having issues with kind of what a 3-3-5 brings, which is a lot of you don't know where that 4th rusher is coming from. You don't know kind of where to set your blocking schemes, I would imagine to make it easier, Kentucky would go in the 12 personnel and try to get Carolina out of that if the game comes to that.
Adam, when you look at special teams, we tend to talk about that more here in Columbia than, in past years or maybe at some other places because of how explosive they've been in that area. Give us your assessment of the matchup on special teams that we all think this is probably going to be a closer, fourth quarter game. So maybe a special teams play here or there could weigh into this equation. What does Kentucky look like in the kicking game, the coverage game, protecting, all those things?
Yeah, Georgia Southern transfer Alex Rayner has been really dependable for Kentucky. They oddly haven't had to use him much field goal wise because they've done a pretty good job finishing drives when scoring opportunities present. But he's been pretty reliable. Anything about 45 yards and in, I think they feel really, really good about him. Kickoff coverage has been pretty good. They put in the end zone a lot for touchbacks. Barian Brown is very dangerous as a kick returner, and they do put him back there on punts if they think there's a chance for a big return. They want to get him the ball, and he's shown that he can take it to the house at any moment. But he's also shown where there's some bad returns mixed in there too. So he's kind of a boom and bust player back there, but he can take it to the house at any point. He's probably been the best kick returner this program has had in quite a while. And then punting has been a big issue. I believe Kentucky's down in the hundreds in net punting average. The coverage has been good. They're just not getting a lot of hang time or air on some of these punts. So I mentioned the Missouri game. That game really flipped. If you go back and watch that game, Kentucky's up 14-0. Missouri gets a fourth and I think 3, and it kind of in no man's land where it would have been like a 56-yard field goal. They fake a punt. The punter drops a dime, and a receiver makes a great catch, score a touchdown, and that game totally flipped. And then short punts allowed Missouri to get a lot of short fields in the second half, which led to some easy scoring drives for them. So Kentucky has lost the game essentially because of special teams play, and that's a concern, obviously, when you're going up against a Shane Beamer and Pete Limbo team, especially when you look back last year. South Carolina blocked the punt, and they kind of flipped that game early. So that is a big concern. But overall, Kentucky special teams have been improved. It was really just that one game against Missouri where it kind of really cost the team in a big moment.
Hey, Adam, we got about 2 minutes till a hard break here. Like Chris said, probably a tight game. From the Kentucky perspective, what are your keys to victory or keys to who is going to be the victor in this one?
Yeah, I think you kind of look at it, and I think Spencer Rattler's kind of going to get his. Xavier Leggett's kind of going to get his. But I think Kentucky should be able to make South Carolina one-dimensional. And so it's just really just don't give up the big play and make them earn drives. But then offensively, I think Kentucky, you really need to make – South Carolina's defense has struggled to get stops, it looks like. That the Vanderbilt performance kind of came out of nowhere. And so you really need to take advantage of that. So I think for Kentucky, get the run game going, find balance, be able to throw the football and score some points. Feels like a game, the first one to 30 is probably going to win it. So for Kentucky, they've shown they can get there in SEC play previously. And then the Tennessee game, we've seen them really pass heavy. One game, we've seen them really run heavy, Florida. And so if they can put that together, I think they can have a good performance. And so I think for Kentucky, it's score some points, finish drives, and defensively, it's take away the run and don't give up the big pass play and make South Carolina kind of earn their scores.
All right, Adam. Well, thank you so much for taking a few minutes of your time this morning to give us some more insight into the Kentucky program. Certainly stay safe on your way down here, and hopefully have a good game tomorrow night. And you guys have been listening to your show this week. You guys seem to enjoy Columbia when you get to come down here.
Will do. Thanks, guys.
All right, absolutely. Again, Adam Luckett from Kentucky Sports Radio on his way down, letting us know a little bit more about the Kentucky program. Speaking of tomorrow night's game, I have a pair of tickets. Chris, throw me a number. What caller should we take today?
Ooh. Let's take number 3.
Caller number 3? All right, caller number 3 right now, 803-404-6100. Win yourself a pair of tickets to the Gamecocks and the Wildcats coming up tomorrow night, 7:30 out at Williams-Brice Stadium. Coming up next is our favorite segment of the week. It's Buy or Sell here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
Welcome to Talkville, the ultimate Smallville rewatch podcast. I always drove the cars, the Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghinis. They were always a little skeptical, but sometimes they go, all right, Rosie, just go up where the stop sign is and turn the car around, and we'll give you your cue on the walkie. And I go, great. And they're like, Rosie? I'm like, yeah, dude. Oh, yeah, this stop sign? They're like, yes, there's only that stop. Oh, okay.
Jump in now or catch up on any of the past seasons of Talkville on YouTube or wherever you listen.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris with you on this Football Friday, getting you set for Gamecocks and the Wildcats tomorrow night, 7:30 out at Williams-Brice Stadium. Pre-game coverage right here on the game beginning at 2:30 with Gamecocks Game Day. Myself and Terry Ford broadcasting live out at the party lot at Sound and Images at 807 Bluff Road, leading you up into network coverage that kicks in at 4:30, leading you straight up until kickoff. Well, thank you once again to Adam Luckett from Kentucky Sports Radio for joining us in that first segment there. But it's now time for our favorite segment of the week. It's time to buy or sell. All right,
Man,
Wes, lay it on me.
I'm pumped. Buy or sell, brought to you by our friend Kendall Walsh. Tell you more about her here in a moment. But, guys, we've been talking about Ray Davis all week long, so I felt like we had to start the buy or sell with Ray Davis.
Okay.
So we talked about him a little bit yesterday, and Adam just told us, hey, it's been a little boomer bust. We saw him look like a Heisman contender against Florida. Some other games he's surprisingly been held in check. And it apparently has been boomer bust within those games as well. We know South Carolina's defense has been boomer bust at times too. So, all right, guys, we're going to make this very simple. Ray Davis, buy or sell, over 100 yards on the ground tomorrow evening, Williams-Brice Stadium.
Ooh, we can throw it to me first, Chris.
Just to shake it up, you know?
Yeah. I'll sell. I think he gets close to it, but maybe not over.
Tyler with the big sell early on. Chris, how you feeling?
Big old sell. All right, so here's a stat to accompany this. Ray Davis has 3 games of 100 yards or more this season. One of them was 280 yards against Florida. But, Wes, some of the other games?
Yeah.
I mean, here's one you said, hey, against the Mississippi State team that struggled, 21 for 80. Like, where can you sign up for that if you're a South Carolina fan? Man, I do have to go over. I'm going to buy over 100 yards.
Did you just not so fast, my friend, yourself? I feel like you were setting us up for
you gotta hold a pencil when you do that.
I've got one.
You got one?
Yeah, we'll pretend.
There you go.
Yeah. Yep, I'm gonna buy. I don't think he has a 280-yard game, but I do think he gets over 100.
Yeah, I'm buying too.
Okay.
Tyler,
the outlier.
No, would you take, if you're South Carolina, would you take a 21-carry, 102-yard performance?
I was going to say 101. Absolutely, yes. You would take. I think you would take that.
If he's right in the neighborhood of 100 yards, I think you can still
that feels
say
right to
that
me.
you have a good shot at winning the game. But if he's like 140, 150, yeah, it's a little bit more dangerous.
You can't do a 280.
No.
You can't sustain that.
No, golly.
Not going to work.
Do you know how many tackles Florida missed in that game, by the way?
39.
17.
Holy.
17 missed tackles in that game.
I think he forced 12 is what we saw the
bulk
other day.
of them were Ray Davis alone. We talked about it yesterday. Their run blocking is actually not all that great. And that game was actually the lowest of the season. He just ran through people's arms every time.
Yeah, that's going to be – this is a fascinating game, I think. Like, there are a lot of just little game-within-the-game things. Is South Carolina tackling him when they get to him? Or is he dragging the first guy? You know, like I don't know. Like I can picture him having a Mississippi State type performance. I could also picture him going for $150. Like I really could. And I'm very interested to see how South Carolina tries to attack on defense as well. All right. Anyway, moving on. I bought it. Buy or sell. Both teams will score in the 30s in this game. Traditionally, and by traditionally, I just mean recent tradition, this thing has been very low scoring, I feel like. Points at a premium. But both defenses have been this year. What's so funny?
That noise.
Eh.
That's the best way I can think to describe them.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah, absolutely correct.
I'm gonna jump in line here, and I'm actually gonna sell, but I do think one team will be in the 30s.
Okay. So it's both teams have to be in the 30s.
Yeah, the
All
buy
right,
or
just wanna
sell.
make
is
sure.
Yeah, so I've got the winning team in the 30s, the other team in the high-ish 20s.
I'll sell with a spoiler. I've got both teams in the 20s.
Really?
Oh,
Yes, sir.
interesting. What's the over-under on this game? Under is 54.
There you go.
So, yeah, I guess that kind of predicts both teams to be in that 20 range. But I will buy because I have both teams in the 30s.
Interesting.
So we all have different answers. I've got neither. Wes has one. Tyler has both. This is what we like. Good buy or sell question, Wes.
Thank you.
So somebody's going to be right.
So I don't, just to make
Exactly.
sure, like, correct myself here, I may have said buy. I'm selling it because I only have one.
Because you said both teams.
Yes.
So I'm buying both teams.
You're buying both.
Selling, but you at least have the winning team in the 30s. He doesn't have
Yes.
either one.
Yes. We'll get to our scores here later on. Okay, third one here. Spencer Rattler. And I'll be honest, I struggled coming up with, I wanted to think of something creative here. It just didn't have it. Spencer Rattler, 3 touchdown passes or more. 3 or more touchdown passes.
Chris, you can go first on this one.
Sell. For some reason I'm playing over under. I keep saying over under. I'm going to sell. I've got 2 for Spencer.
What you got, Ty?
Oof. I'll buy. I mean, he plays so much differently at home. 4 against Florida, 3 last weekend against Vanderbilt. It's just something
Playing
about
the
playing at
numbers.
home, playing the numbers. And again, this Kentucky defense, and we just heard it from Adam, questions in the secondary. I think he could be in for another big day on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm buying too, and it kind of struck me, guys. So, Tyler, I know you've been listening to some KSR this week too. I've been listening to a couple of their podcast episodes. They sounded like us. And what I mean by that is they were talking about, man, this team's that Kentucky has played, they had a career day today, and they were talking about quarterbacks. So this Kentucky defense, I don't think I realized this. It's not the Kentucky defense we are used to seeing.
No.
And so that's led to very big, very efficient days for opponents.
Yeah, this is kind of the Spider-Man meme. They're pointing at each other.
You know, and the other part, guys, and this doesn't directly relate to Spencer, but it kind of does. It ultimately does. They have not been good at getting pressure on teams, and that has been that's the secret sauce for South Carolina. I feel like for about 5 years, the secret sauce for South Carolina offensively was, hey, can they run the football? Can they not run the football? If they can run the football, they're going to have a decent day on offense. This year, that's really not the case. It's can you protect Spencer Rattler? We talked about it. You know, Alabama, as good as they have gotten and as much as they've improved, Alabama does not statistically have a good offensive line in terms of pass protection. Kentucky didn't get a single sack last week against Alabama.
Yep.
Now, there is a very clear line when they face really good offenses, they tend to get completely exposed and give up a ton of points. When they face like offenses outside of the top 25, they have been pretty good at shutting teams down. So where on that sort of line does South Carolina fall? I tend to think South Carolina at home, where Rattler's been really good, albeit against not always great defenses, and against a team that has not just been a great pressure defense. That could lead to a big day for Rattler. And the fact he's just had big days all year long, I think leads to that as well. Final one,
We got,
of course.
You
What?
want to save this for the other side? Do we have time for this?
Well, you tell me, do we have time for this?
Let's save this for
That's-
the other
that's
side
your-
so we're not
That's
rushing
your
it here.
question to answer.
We'll wrap up buy or sell and also hear Coach Beamer's keys to the game as today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, rolls on your Football Friday here on the game. Welcome back in to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris with you on this Football Friday. Remind you once again, just because We gave away $1,000 after last weekend's special teams touchdown.
Ooh.
Doing it once again this weekend. Not $1,000. Pot goes back down to $100 in the Loyal Lisa special teams touchdown contest. Head on over to 1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win, because if they score another one this weekend, you could win that $100 come Monday morning with Bill and Preston on the early game. Let's wrap up today's edition of Buy or Sell.
Well, I was going to say, if we want to save it to the very, very end, we could also do that. Because the final one is buy or sell. South Carolina will win the football game. So up to y'all. We can go ahead and tease it, or we can just...
We could save it because that goes in line with
putting a score prediction.
Putting the score predictions out there. As we gave a little tease to what those scores might be, let's instead hear what Coach Beamer had to say last night on Carolina Calls in regards to his keys to a victory tomorrow.
Key on Saturday night, and our fans, and they will be. Crowd noise will be critical. It's hard to win on the road in the SEC, as we have shown this year, and a lot of teams in this league have shown. So we need our fans to show up, and they will. And then certainly we got to play physical. I mean, this is a team that wants to run the ball and have a fantastic running back to do it. We've got to do a great job ourselves playing physical, running the ball, stopping the run, and these games, it seems, are always four-quarter dogfights, and field position and turnovers are going to be critical like they always are, but especially in this game.
Of course, South Carolina's played exceptionally well at home this season, and Kentucky's definitely going to have a tough task going into a night game at Williams-Brice Stadium, which has been very good to South Carolina in Beamer's tenure here so far. But as we talked about, it's going to be one of those games that's won and lost in the trenches. And while Kentucky is certainly not the same defense they've been in the past, it's still going to be physical. We talked about the big guys that they have up front. You're really going to have to work for every yard you can get, especially when it comes to running the ball, and vice versa when it comes to Kentucky running the ball. Very been hot or cold when it comes to Ray Davis, and hopefully another good game for the likes of Boogie and Tonka, and continuing on the trend they've had so far in the month of November.
Yeah, it's going to be a dogfight, y'all. And night game, Willie B. I expect South Carolina fans to have a full day of tailgating going into this one.
It'll be a very nice day, too, by the way.
Yeah, perfect day, right? I mean, I think it's going to be in the 70s maybe during tailgating time. It's going to be fun, man. And I think tight game to the end. It's kind of interesting. Kentucky, from what I've read and heard, again, leaning on those guys at KSR, too, they're a little bit of kind of boom or bust on offense as well. It's just more South Carolina has been so reliant on, the passing game and big plays from Rattler and Luckett. They, they've been a little bit more balanced, but also obviously skewed towards the rushing attack. So similar, but then because of different reasons, I think. So, my keys, I start to think about who's going to score touchdowns in the red zone. Obviously, turnovers are always going to be important in a tight game. But, to me, what has stood out as we've maybe had a chance to dive a little bit more into Kentucky as the week has progressed has been that Kentucky has not been as adept at avoiding those big plays as they have been in the past. And so I started the week thinking you could see a little bit more of the same things we've seen in the past, where South Carolina kind of just isn't able to get those big plays and maybe struggles to move the football in Kentucky. The more we've heard, the more I'm like, well, Dow Loggins, Spencer Rattler, Luckett, these tight ends, Kentucky's really struggled at safety from what I've heard. It may set up for another big day through the air for South Carolina.
I like how you put it, Wes, in that these teams are similar for different reasons. The biggest similarity to me, and I'm just going to be brutally honest about it, if you go up and down each team's schedule, has either team beaten a good team? The answer is no to me.
We thought Florida was better when Kentucky beat them. We've obviously
but they're not.
Seen they're not.
They're not, right? And so, but now both of these teams have a common win in that they both taken care of Mississippi State, also not a good team.
And also, I mean, Mississippi State was without Will Rogers when they played him a couple weeks ago.
That's right.
A different team in that.
Different team in that regard. And if you flip it around, both of these teams have lost to really good teams. You don't get a lot of in the middle with both of these teams. Like Kentucky has beaten Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron, Vandy, and Florida. Florida was their best win, right?
Right.
If you're South Carolina, I guess your best win is Mississippi State, I guess. You might even say Jacksonville State. I had somebody pose the question to me, would Jacksonville State beat Mississippi State and Vandy? I would think hard about that.
I could pretty confidently say Vandy.
I think they would
State
beat
might
Vandy.
They'd beat
interesting.
Vandy, and they might beat Mississippi State.
Yeah.
But regardless, these teams have different strengths. They both have different warts, but it's just hard to tell. And that's why this game's so captivating, is because you're finally getting a couple teams that are more evenly matched, whereas Kentucky's not playing Bama and Georgia. South Carolina's not playing Georgia and Missouri.
I want to go back to something we were talking about a moment ago with the physicality. I just took a call from Charlie on the Love Chevrolet phone lines, 803-404-6100. Kentucky has always been a physical team, and as we mentioned, the defense not as good this year as it has been in years past. Are we giving them the benefit of the doubt with physicality, or is that something that feel like we could have maybe taken a step back to this year?
Physicality on defense?
Just physicality in general, but more specifically defense, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're probably giving them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, but also I think we're in context. South Carolina still has not quite been the run-stopping defense that they want to be, that they dream to be, that they aspire to be. So, I think you always look at it in terms of context and matchups as well. Let's go back to last year. South Carolina, probably the more physical team actually in that game overall. But I do think if you look back, Kentucky ran the football pretty well against South Carolina, and I thought outsmarted themselves at times, especially with a first game starting quarterback. So I look at their front. They look the part. Like, they look big and physical. They haven't necessarily – they've showed they can stop the run against some teams, and I think I would look for that to continue tomorrow. Like, I don't think South Carolina's just going to show up and line up and mash Kentucky. But I think Kentucky – you know what catches my attention that is different? This is not a good tackling Kentucky team. And
I heard Adam say that.
He said that the PFF grades – matches, they match that as well. I don't know how much of that is, he mentioned the secondary specifically. So how much does that factor into, Mario Anderson running in the box and being a guy that we've seen show he can run through tackles? That they have, from what I understand, a couple of pretty good linebackers. They don't have much depth behind them. So, that factors in. If Mario Anderson gets going in this game, South Carolina wins this football game. I think they can win it without that, because I think Rattler and Luckett and the tight ends are going to play a big factor. But if you add in that element, then I think it ends up being maybe a long night for Kentucky.
Well, there's some guys on the South Carolina roster that can – we've talked a lot about Ray Davis, right, how he can make you pay if you don't tackle well. That's obvious. We've probably – or I'll say I have. I've undersold probably in breaking down this game and analyzing what could happen – the fact that, South Carolina's got some guys that can make you pay too. Mario Anderson's one of them, like you said, Wes. How about Josh Simon? He broke 6 tackles last week by himself. They've got some guys. Xavier Luckett, if you get him in the open field, he's more liable to just make you just run past you even than break a tackle, I would say. But they've got some guys that can make you pay. Spencer Rattler in the backfield, maneuvering out of the pocket, maneuvering in the pocket. If you're Kentucky, if you struggle with pass rush, number one, but number two, if you get an opportunity and then Spencer Rattler is able to wiggle out of it and break the pocket, he's shown the ability to make some big plays there too. So definitely another storyline to watch here.
Absolutely. We will give our final thoughts as well as our score predictions as we wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, coming up on your Football Friday here on the game. Not one here. Welcome back in, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you. I figured since Darude's going to be in town, we may as well wrap up today's show with a little bit of Sandstorm. Feels right.
So you do have the power to change the music.
Well, this one's actually playing off a hotkey, but I won't get into the specific details.
You've let us in on the secret. By the way, guys, I know we're going to talk about the football game in the final segment here, but real quick, Sandstorm was playing a bunch at CLA last night.
Oh, my goodness.
69-point win.
It's a nice
by
victory.
South Carolina women's basketball. Let me just say real quickly, if you haven't been to see these girls play, go check it out. Like, super entertaining. Wifey and I went to the game last night. They're even better than you think they are.
I legitimately wondered about halfway through the second quarter if Clemson was actually going to score again. They went about a full 10 minutes without scoring
It was
once.
a 28-0 run.
Yeah,
I
that was
think.
unreal.
Full Wiley, incredible. Pow.
Raven
She
Johnson.
can shoot it. Raven Johnson
17 assists.
just happy dishing the ball around, getting her teammates involved. I'll tell you who is good that I just didn't have on my radar is the freshman, the Ja girl.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, she gets after it. She's good. I mean, Kitts has made like a huge leap. You know what you got with Cardoso. I mean, this team just loaded.
I think it speaks volumes. They are the number 2 scoring offense in all of women's college basketball behind Jackson State at 107 points a game. Camila Cardoso is 185th nationally in individual scoring. That just shows you how much distribution they have, how many girls are getting out on the floor. And again, this is the first time in the Dawn Staley era they've had 3 straight games scoring over 100 points.
Yeah,
Like, this team is unreal.
If you haven't been to see them in person yet this year, seriously, if you like hoops at all, you owe it to yourself. Go check it out. Man, this team is fun. They are fun. And Full Wiley, I don't know how, like, it defies
The behind
physics.
the back, man.
I don't know how the ball just sticks to her hand.
It's unreal.
Like, it is insane. There was one point where I think there were 4 Clemson girls around her, and she just juked them all.
I'm not putting the cart ahead of the horse here. We expect Malaysia Full Wiley to be another great for South Carolina, but I did see a meme last night. It was pretty funny. You guys know the meme of, I think it's the Popeyes worker sitting outside on the bench with their head down. It said the sculptor for CLA, knowing they got to make another statue in a couple years.
Yes. That was from our buddy Avery Wilkes.
Was
I
it really?
believe.
Okay.
Yes. You got to throw some credit to Avery.
Okay. Credit Avery. I was just kind of scrolling through and saw it, but yeah, I think that's pretty fitting.
Yeah. Full White, man. Hey, the other thing, we'll get back to the football game because we only have a few more minutes. Dawn Staley letting these girls just go play.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important to note.
Absolutely. No, exciting for that. They got South Dakota State coming in on Monday night, continuing on for taking on North Carolina here end of the month. So some more tough opponents coming up, Utah, as well as obviously the SEC Conference slate once we get to the first of the year. Men's team playing very late tonight, by the way, against DePaul at 11:30 out there in Arizona. So thankfully there's no noon kick tomorrow, so we can all hopefully stay up for that one.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, right?
That's right.
The football season is underway, and Believe podcasts are talking about it.
When he went home and went to sleep, Michael Parsons was terrorizing him.
Believe has podcasts covering all 32 professional teams and many of your favorite college teams, too.
And to be only producing 15 points a game, that's something that is definitely disheartening.
Sideline to sideline, end zone to end zone.
As a quarterback, I would expect him to be acting like that. Take the accountability. Put that on yourself. Don't put it on your teammates.
Search BLEAV podcasts wherever you listen.
Getting back to the task at hand, though, Kentucky and South Carolina coming up tomorrow. It's time to wrap up buy or sell and give our final score predictions.
Yeah, buy or sell. South Carolina will win the football game. I already know what y'all are all going to say.
Okay.
Y'all aren't going to send the Gamecock fans home sad today.
We need them to get to a bowl game.
So I think you're all buying.
Now, Chris's buy is a little interesting because he doesn't think either team's going to get into the 30s.
That's correct.
I'm interested to know your score.
All right. So, look, if this showing my work, as Wes says, if this game was in Kentucky, I might be picking Kentucky. I'm not sure because I haven't fully thought that one through. But this game is in the much friendlier confines of Williams-Brice Stadium. And so I think it's going to be a close one. I mean, that's kind of where we all are. But I do have South Carolina pulling out a narrow one. So I'll buy Gamecocks win, number one. Number two, the score prediction. Lower scoring, Gamecocks 27, Kentucky 24.
Yeah, you can read all of our predictions on GamecockCentral.com. It is a free read that'll be out a little bit later on if Terry ever sends in his picks. We'll see. Tyler, what you got, man?
I have both teams in the 30s. South Carolina's been very consistent with their scoring at home. At home, they've scored 47. They've scored 37. They've scored 39. They've scored 38, and they've scored 47. So I'm going to keep that trend going. I think South Carolina wins this game, tight one at the end, maybe on a last-second field goal, 37-34.
Ooh. I feel like that would be a fun game. Is this going to be – so if you can get past the end of the Florida game, I know it's tough for Gamecock fans, but take a step back a little bit. That was a fun football game to watch.
From a neutral perspective, very entertaining.
One of the best games we've seen at Willie B, I think, in a while. It just didn't end up the way Gamecock fans wanted it to. Maybe a similar game. I don't know. We'll see. I've got South Carolina 33. Again, y'all know I like to kind of just middle the points there, so I pick a random one. So if 30 or 31 hits, I look close. If 35 hits, I look close. So I got South Carolina 33, Kentucky 27.
Ooh. Now, see, 33 is a bizarre number to reach, but, they've been doing that pretty consistently at home. 47 last week, 39, 47 against Furman. They've had funky scores at home more often than not this year.
Well, they've had some issues on PATs, and also they are always a threat to go for two.
That's true.
On a PAT, so that skews your traditional numbers there, I feel like.
I want to see a safety. I need to see a safety.
Ooh. You calling a safety?
Why not? I'll buy a safety. How about that?
Create your own category. I do like Tyler. Seriously, coming in here today, I was like, I'm kind of feeling a potential walk-off field goal for a win, and you brought that up. I didn't go on record with it, but I could get there. That'd be exciting.
By the Gamecocks?
Yeah. Well, I picked the Gamecocks. So it'd have to be the Gamecocks.
That music's playing. That means we have to be quiet now.
Predictions are locked in. We'll see what happens tomorrow night. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show with myself and Terry Ford as Football Friday, sponsored by Carolina Honda Powerhouse, rolls on here on.
Welcome to Talkville, the ultimate Smallville rewatch podcast. I always drove the cars, the Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghinis. They were always a little skeptical, but sometimes they go, all right, Rosie, just go up where the stop sign is and turn the car around, and we'll give you your cue on the walkie. And I go, great. And they're like, Rosie? I'm like, yeah, dude. Oh, yeah, this stop sign? They're like, yes, there's only that stop. Oh, okay.
Jump in now or catch up on any of the past seasons of Talkville on YouTube or wherever you listen.